Chapter 15. The last strains of Amazing Grace drifted through the opened windows of the church house and into the bars of Zeke's cell. He sang along with the bits of music he could hear, matching his tenor harmony to that of the congregation. 2 nights in the cell was more than enough time for Zeke to cool from the events of Friday. He was still reeling from the newest information. Thank God there was enough grace for all. Boy, did he need it. He knew it was freely given by the Lord Almighty. If only Tobias Franklin would be as generous. Such a small piece of family information, yet how vital. Eloise Davidson, a widow. He laughed at the irony, but sobered quickly. She might be unmarried, but that didn't mean she was available. Her heart was an open wound, unable to heal. Yes, she'd filled his thoughts since their first meeting. He wanted to make everything better, and he felt oddly responsible for her well-being, especially now that all he had done was cause her more pain. Yes, they'd had some great moments and a growing friendship, but judging by the daggers she shot at him, she wouldn't be leaning on his arm any time soon. He'd made a mess of things, all right. Zeke had assaulted the one man in her life she loved more than anyone, that she depended on, and what an impression he'd made on Marybeth. Sam Hill take it all. He had a lot of fixing to do. He thought of all the things he'd muddled over the past week, from their first vulnerable encounter at the creek to the angry sparks after the dance. Her flushed cheeks and blue eyes were prominently featured in each memory. Marveling at how a few days could change everything, Zeke put in order what he needed to do when he got out. Rachel once threatened that he'd meet someone whose opinion would matter more than his dreams and derail all his plans. He hadn't believed her. Yet here he was in jail, for the honor of a girl that he'd just met, a girl who didn't want anything to do with him. Oh boy, Rachel was right. It was time to move to another town, and quickly. He had the new shoe on Susie girl and enough cash to feed himself for a few miles. Too bad he liked this place so much. He would be more careful next time. Stick to himself. At the next stop, he would work enough for a train ticket straight to the ocean. He'd learned that traveling by foot was too painful. Making friends only to leave them after a few days wasn't the life he wanted. The front door squeak set his heart racing. It was Tobias. His left eye was swollen shut with dark bruising around it. "Oh," Zeke said. "Oh, boss. I mean, did I do that?" Tobias shut the door painfully slow and stood there and stared at Zeke. The silence grew more uncomfortable by the second, as the blasted clock on the wall wouldn't let him forget. Tobias sighed and pulled his shirt tails up. "And this," he lifted the side of his shirt to show more bruising on the taut muscles below his ribs. "I've not looked this bad since school. I got into it with an older boy about a girl. You should have seen the other guy." Zeke shook his head. Grabbing the arm of the one available chair, Tobias scraped it across the floor. The screeching didn't seem to faze Tobias, but to Zeke it was akin to the judgment trumpets. Tobias sat facing Zeke. Even sitting there with erect face and his elbows on his knees, he had the presence of authority. Tobias was a well-liked man. That was a given. But there was a reason he did well running a company with multiple men working under him. He had a way about him that invited others to pay attention. "Ezekiel James," he said. Zeke swallowed. "Yes, sir." "Sit down. You're hurting my neck." Zeke dropped to the edge of the cot. This slow dialogue ate him up. His stomach growled, reminding him of Sunday lunch and how he hadn't had any yet. To fill in the terrible silence, he started talking. "I'm sorry. I don't know what came over me. I can make it up to you. I mean, I'll try. I know you probably don't ever want to see me again, but if there's anything I can do to show you how dreadfully sorry I am, maybe you'd rather I just leave. I can skip town as soon as you say the word. I mean, as soon as I get out of here. The sheriff has told me nothing." He knew he was doing the babbling thing again. "Shut up, Zeke." But the floodgates had been opened. "I know better than to fight with my hands. I was taught better than that. And doing what I did in front of a woman. Good grief. And my boss. I guess you could say I shot myself in the foot on all accounts." Tobias waved his hand in front of his face and made a fist, silencing Zeke. Leaning forward, Tobias looked him in the eyes, and a smile spread across his mouth. Dee came by yesterday. Yeah, but I still shouldn't have... I'm honored, Tobias interrupted. I'm honored to have seen the fire come out in you for a just cause. But... Tobias stopped him again. Oh, believe me, I would rather you carry out your sense of justice without fists and after you've checked your facts. You've got a mighty left hook. I'm proof of that. But if I understand what's going on here, I name you as a friend through and through. I'm dropping all charges, and insisting that all other charges be dropped. Sheriff is always butting in, but we'll have you cleared as far as the law is concerned. Sheriff is dragging his feet for political reasons, trying to make an example out of you, but he's played long enough. Really? Zeke sat up straight. For the first time in days, a glimmer of hope spread through him. Yep, Sheriff will be here soon. I asked him to give me a minute first. Relief flooded Zeke. Grace upon grace upon grace. He didn't deserve it, but there it was. Tobias wasn't done. I can't believe you would think so low of me that I would marry my sister. What? No, I didn't think that. I was... Laughter filled the room, and then Tobias winced and held his side. A groan escaped as he tried to hold in further laughter. You should see your face. It's going to be a long time before I let you forget about this. A long time. That wouldn't be a problem. Zeke never stayed anywhere for a long time. No reason Oklebo would be any different. About that. Zeke rubbed the back of his neck, scrambling for the right words. How is Eloise? Not what he'd meant to say. Tobias's laughter stopped, and he stared hard at Zeke. Then he sighed and looked down at his hands, picking the skin around his thumbnail. Just when Zeke thought he couldn't take the silence any more, Tobias answered. She's hurting. Because of me? Some because of you, and because of other things. She's been hurting for a long time. Years. I'd like to ask you to leave her alone, but... He offered a half-smile and shrugged. I haven't seen Elle smile so much in one day as I saw on Friday. I haven't seen her get so worked up about a dinner guest in, well, ever. She's been different this week, and the only thing new in her life is you. The blood drained from Zeke's face. What had he gotten himself into? He didn't mean to tangle with a girl. He had plans. He was going west. A girl wasn't going to distract him from that. He barely knew her. Okay, so he thought she was cute and funny, but he didn't have feelings for her. Not the kind of feelings to keep him from leaving. Just the kind of feelings to keep you in jail for 3 days after attacking a man out of jealousy. That was different. He lied to himself. He knew the way she avoided eye contact when she was sad. He knew how she blinked her eyes low when she was nervous. He knew how she pursed her lips just so when she was angry. He knew she had a banked fire inside just waiting to come alive again. He'd seen glimpses of it and wanted to fuel it. He wanted to kindle the spark. He wanted her to share her dreams, fears, and excitements. He wanted to make her laugh and tease her until she smiled at him again. He knew that if she looked at him too long, he would drown in her sea-blue eyes. I didn't mean to hurt anybody, Zeke said to Tobias, feeling defeated. Tobias guffawed. I'd say I'm a walking contradiction to that. Listen, for what it's worth, I think she really did like you. For whatever reason, she came out of that shell of hers this week for the first time in over a year. Do you know how long it's been since she attended an event besides church? Zeke shook his head. Too long. More than 14 months. But after what happened, he pointed to Zeke, she doesn't trust herself. She's angry. She's hurt. I don't know what was said between the two of you on Friday, but she was a mess. And then I came back looking like this because of you? He whistled low. It's a lot to process. She kissed me, Zeke whispered. Tobias cocked his head. She what now? On the cheek, sort of friendly-like, he swallowed. But I shoved her away, thinking she was married and all. It was complicated after that. I'm not sure what happened. Tobias stared until Zeke squirmed under the scrutiny, then shook his head. Dee came by last night to talk to us. The man could hardly tell the story because he was laughing so hard. She knows, then? Heck yes, she knows. You think I could keep a joke like that quiet? Land sakes, everybody knows. Tobias started his wheezing laughter again. Perfect. Does the jail have a back door? He would make a straight shot from here to the livery and nary a goodbye to anyone. God bless Simon. Don't fret, Tobias said. Helen may take longer to find forgiveness. She's got a reputation to uphold, but we'll find you a place. In the meantime, you'll come for lunch today, and I'll help get things sorted out. Tobias moved to the door. Stopping with his hand on the frame, he turned back. Do me a favor and give me a heads up the next time you want to start a brawl, so I've got a fighting chance. Tobias? Tobias cocked his head and waited. She blames herself. For Philip. She thinks it's her fault. Tobias stared at him with his one unswollen eye, his face unreadable. His shoulders seemed to take on another burden before he pivoted through the door and pulled it shut behind him.
You did what? Eloise resisted the urge to kick her brother. A sleeping Luke in her arms prevented further violence. If his one bruised eye wasn't so pathetic, she might have blackened it all over again. Well, not really. No matter how many times she took a swing at him, he rarely allowed her to make contact. Zeke must have thoroughly taken him by surprise in order to do such damage. She settled for a foot stomp. Very ladylike. If Mother could see me now. Get over yourself, Eloise.
Stop worrying so much. It will be fine.
Tobias rubbed her shoulder, but she jerked away. Tobias opened and held the door for her to enter first. She would not be coddled. She strutted inside. What do you expect me to feed him? Maybe I'll sound the trumpet and announce to the whole town we've invited the man who assaulted you. Let's bring Mary Beth over, too, and they can have tea.
Elle, I don't care what you feed him, and if you have something against Mary, too, out with it already.
Tobias quietly shut the door, careful not to let it slam and wake Luke.
You should have seen him. He looks terrible. I can't believe Sheriff held him so long, especially when nothing happened. I could have cleared up the whole thing if he'd let us be. It's unfortunate he was nearby.
That's your takeaway? Oh, honestly, Tobias, it's unfortunate your eye is so swollen that you can't see out of it. It's unfortunate that Zeke has a temper. And it's unfortunate that you invited the man over to our house without asking me first. She shifted Luke. Her angry whispers hadn't affected him in the least.
We've been over this.
Tobias gently removed Luke's shoes and set them on the floor near the door.
It was a misunderstanding. I can't say that I wouldn't have done the same thing under the circumstances.
Easing out of his jacket, he draped his and Eloise's shawl over the chair.
I think he's got grit.
Eloise ran out of steam and she huffed. Maybe the next time he can misunderstand without slugging anyone. She eyed Tobias. Don't leave those on the chair, please, she said, adding an eye roll out of habit. I still don't know what you expect me to feed him. All I have is last night's soup to warm up and some dry bread. I hope you're pleased.
Sounds great.
He moved his jacket and her shawl from the chair and dumped them at the foot of the stairs.
If it's good enough for us, it's good enough for him.
Pick those up. Sitting straight-backed on the edge of the sofa, she glared at him. Doesn't seem right feeding a guest leftover soup.
Then don't think of him as a guest.
Tobias pulled his tie over his head and tossed it on the discarded pile he had no intention of picking up. Eloise smoothed the tuft of hair on the top of Luke's head. Would you rather I think of him as a released convict? She asked sweetly.
Elle.
He gave her a pointed look.
Be nice.
He nodded toward the window.
He's here.
Her big talk evaporated when she saw Zeke out the window with his head down. She unceremoniously transferred Luke to his father and fled to the kitchen. Clanking the dishes and utensils loudly, she stomped about the kitchen in her preparations. As she busied herself in setting the table for the four of them, she ignored the men's conversation in the other room. Soon, she had nothing else to do. Unable to hide any longer, she steeled herself for the awkward, terrible, and unappetizing meal to come. Was it too late to run and hide in her room? She wiped the sweat from her palms on her apron again and smoothed her hair one last time before calling out, "Boys, dinner!" Hanging her apron on its peg, she left the kitchen. The men ignored her. They were deep in conversation about what she didn't know. And I don't care. At least that's what she tried to convince herself. Luke squirmed out of Tobias's lap to run to the table. At least one of them was hungry. Eloise stood, waiting, and tapped her foot. They paid her no mind. They had their heads together, talking over something of great importance. She spun on her heels, making a show of her departure. Finding Luke on the table, she caught him stirring the pot with the long-handled spoon. "Oh, no, you don't." Clicking her tongue at him, she plopped him in his chair. He was growing and learning new tricks every day. He couldn't be left alone for 1 second. "You hungry? You can wait just like the rest of us. Dada will be in soon." The men sauntered in just as she took her place. Tobias ignored her glares, and Zeke ignored her entirely. The feeling was mutual. Tobias sat opposite her with Zeke on the corner across from Luke. Offering Zeke a tight-lipped smile, she added a slight nod of acknowledgement in his direction. "Welcome."
"Thanks for having me."
He didn't look her in the eyes either. What a day this was turning out to be. How should she treat a man who heroically defended her honor by accidentally attacking her brother, not forgetting how he shoved her away after kissing him on a whim? These situations were not covered in the etiquette books her mother made her read. Tobias held Luke's little hand and offered a blessing over the meal before serving. She had never felt so out of place in her own home before. The air was thick with tension between Zeke and her. Eloise only picked at her bread and stirred her stew absent-mindedly.
"Smells great,"
Zeke said. Luke clapped his hands on the table, anticipating food. Eloise shrugged. A biting remark remained on the tip of her tongue. "It's quite simple. I wasn't expecting company." Tobias shot daggers at her, admonishing her to remember her manners and be nice. He was forever the older brother. She sighed, turned to Zeke with a false smile plastered to her face. "How unfortunate for—" Zeke gagged, spitting a large mouthful of soup back into his bowl and covering his mouth with his napkin. His eyes were wide as he stared back at her. His shock was mirrored by Eloise. He fumbled for words.
"I'm sorry. I have you—"
He pointed to his bowl.
"There seems to be something—"
He stared at his soup. Looking down at her own bowl, she tried a sip of broth. It was awful, quite possibly the worst soup she'd ever eaten. Inedibly salty. "Tobias, did you—" He shook his head. That's when she noticed the large salt shaker on the table, completely empty. Groaning, she showed it to the toddler. "Luke, did you put this in the soup?" Luke bounced in his chair. He was busy pulling his bread apart into tiny crumbs and sprinkling them on the floor. She surveyed the room, Luke with his breadcrumbs, Tobias eyeing a large chunk of beef on his spoon, and Zeke looking all manner of meek and guilty. It was too much. Her laughter bubbled quietly. Covering her face, her shoulders shook with laughter.
"Elle, don't cry. It's just food."
Tobias stood, but before he could make his way around, she waved him off. The two men shared a concerned look. Both were afraid to move. But before long, all three of them were laughing. As one would catch his breath, another would start again, and round it went. "Zeke," she managed between breaths, "your face! What you must think of my cooking!" Tears from laughter streamed down her cheeks. Standing, she dumped her bowl back in the pot and did the same with the others.
"My face?"
Zeke slumped in his chair, holding his stomach.
"You should have seen yours."
He tossed his napkin at her face, and Luke joined in the excitement, banging his spoon and squealing at everyone, inciting another round of laughter from the adults.
"Her cooking is bad."
Tobias said.
"But it's not that bad."
"Hey!" Eloise shot Zeke's napkin at her brother. "Oh, dear," she said when the laughter simmered. "What are we going to do now?"
"You have flour?"
Zeke wiped his eyes with the palm of his hand and shoved his too long hair off his forehead. "Yes," she answered.
Salt? Sugar?
"Yes, of course."
Butter?
"Yes, we have all those things. What are you getting at?"
I'll take care of this, if you'll let me. Just fit me with one of those fancy aprons with the ruffles and flower buds.
The good humor lingered in the air, thankfully, melting through all remaining tension. She became his assistant in the small kitchen, bringing him the items he asked about. A bowl, spoon, a frying pan. He wouldn't share his plans, but made a big show of the preparations. Tobias pulled Luke into his lap, and the two of them enjoyed watching while talking and playing together. Eloise almost forgot who she was. She could almost pretend that she was any other girl at any other house having a fine dinner party with friends and family. I could be this girl again. But caution prevailed, even when Zeke smiled and teased. Just as had been the case so many times the past week, banter flowed easily between them. Except this time, she noticed an extra charge between them, an energy that grew and made her want to find out where it led. The same pull that brought an impromptu kiss out of her the other night. Could she really be this girl who wanted to be with this guy, even after everything? When he smiled at her, she smiled back without thought.
Hold still,
he said.
If you insist on playing with flour, you need this.
Zeke held her apron he'd found on the hook. Standing behind her, he efficiently wrapped it around her waist and knotted the back. Butterflies flipped through her middle when his hands touched her waist, even though they didn't linger. "Thank you." Turning around, she met his gaze with a bright smile. She didn't back up, and he didn't either. Luke and Tobias interrupted the moment. "More food!" they chanted, startling Eloise. Before long, pancakes were frying in the butter, and she busied herself clearing the table.
"Order's up,"
Zeke said. He elaborately presented the first plate to the starving toddler. A drizzle of honey completed the meal.
"Catch!"
Zeke cried to Eloise. A flying pancake was heading her way, and she grabbed the corners of her apron to cradle it, calling out in surprise.
"Well caught. Have another."
He waited expectantly, and his eyes twinkled. "Yes, one moment." This time she held a plate at the ready. Tobias mimicked Luke's toddler speech.
"More food."
Eloise smiled and offered him the next loaded plate, ruffling Luke's hair, who still sat on his dad's lap, enjoying the meal, the show, and the extra attention. Zeke continued pouring the batter, flipping and tossing.
"That's the last one. Take your seat, Chipmunk, and hold up your plate."
Soon they were full to bursting, and there was a lull at the table. Luke had long since left Tobias's lap and was off playing in the other room. "Where did you learn to cook so well?" Eloise asked. "These might be the best I've ever had."
"A gentleman never tells."
He wiggled his eyebrows at her.
You can't fool us,"
Tobias said.
"You're no gentleman."
Zeke saluted with his fork and smirked at Tobias.
"Mama taught me everything she knew, but I picked up this particular recipe while working in the kitchen in a boarding house in Iowa last summer."
One of his many employment endeavors, no doubt. Tobias pushed back his plate, feeling satisfied.
"Which reminds me, you can't stay at Palmer's. Even if Helen agreed to it, your room filled up yesterday. A salesman for some nonsense is passing through."
Licking a drop of honey from the side of his thumb, Zeke thought about it for a few seconds. Finally, he spoke.
"I don't need to stay."
He sighed.
"I will be leaving as—"
"Agnes!" Eloise jumped from her chair, startling the men. "The Andersons will take you. They have that extra room in the back, and... She turned quickly to Tobias. "I'm sure they will keep him."
"It's more than I deserve."
Zeke shook his head.
"But I can't go back to the brickyard. He can't rehire a man who behaved the way I did."
He rubbed his neck.
"No, I need to go. No reason to stay with no job."
Tobias nodded.
"He's right, El. Dee agrees with me. It just doesn't look right."
Eloise dropped her face into a pout. She wanted to argue. It was their company. They could do with it as they pleased. Still standing, she stacked her plate with Luke's and reached for Zeke's. He intercepted and caught her hand. She froze and looked him in the eyes, his forest green eyes that warmed her to her toes.
"Thank you,"
he said.
"Thank you for dinner."
Rational thought fled. He held her hand, and it didn't feel wrong. As she stood looking at him, his gaze captured and welcomed her, invited her to settle in, accepting her and all her brokenness. It was more than his words that kept her frozen. Her eyes flickered to his mouth. What would it be like to be kissed by those lips? Heat rushed into her face. Be reasonable, Elle. She yanked her hand free, absently wiping it on her skirt as she walked to the dry sink, forgetting what she was doing. She stood there, staring at the plates in her hands. Tobias held his plate for her, but she did not take it.
Zeke looked at his hand that rested on the table. It burned from her touch. Was it possible she felt the same current between them? He liked her, yes. Had been jealous of a fictitious husband and wanted to protect her, yes. But he wasn't worthy of her attention. He wasn't the kind of man she needed. She needed a reliable man, one who would stay put, one she could depend on. And that wasn't him. Tobias stared at him. "What?" Zeke asked. Glancing from Zeke's hand to Eloise and back again, Tobias raised an eyebrow. Zeke grabbed the plate Tobias still held up. "I don't know what you're talking about." His mind was overtaxed. This wasn't a part of the plan. Meeting a girl who did funny things to his stomach and made his skin tingle wasn't part of the plan. Making friends was natural, sure. Everywhere he'd been, he was well liked. He liked people and knew how to engage with them, and in turn they welcomed him. He'd made stops in almost every town along the line. Getting people to welcome him had never been the problem. That's what made this trek fun. He met new people and saw new things, and it was all part of his grand adventure westward. Until lately. The effort of saying goodbye was getting harder. He was tired and yearning for something more than superficial acquaintances. That was all. What he felt, or thought he felt, for Eloise was only his loneliness speaking. It wasn't real. He'd move on and promptly forget about her, and she'd forget about him. All would be well. He'd thought he'd wanted freedom. What he truly wanted was a home that was all his. Tobias leaned in to whisper, "I might have only one good eye, but I'm not blind." Eloise hung her apron.
"I'm going out."
"Tell Jess I said hi," Tobias said. Without a glance, she was out the door. Zeke wasn't sure if he was relieved or disappointed. Either way, breathing came easier with her out of the room. "She usually run out like that?" A smile lit Tobias's face. He mimicked Zeke. "I don't know what you're talking about." He slapped Zeke's shoulder. "Not that you care, but yeah, she has her moments. She'll be back before nightfall. Don't worry." "I'm not worried." "Of course you're not." Trying and failing to put her from his mind, Zeke spoke of practical things. "I need to find a room in town for tonight. I'll square things with Mrs. Palmer before I take off tomorrow." A loud crash came from the front room. "Luke?" Tobias jumped up. A large can was over Luke's head, and he crashed into the wall again. Zeke laughed. Tobias leaped across the room, and was only a second too late to catch the boy who tripped and fell over a pile of wooden blocks. Seeing the fatherly side of his former boss, was funny. He watched the two play on the rug. Luke used Tobias as his personal climbing station. Finding a comfortable seat on the sofa, Zeke settled in to enjoy a relaxing afternoon. His neck ached, his wrist was sore, his face was scratched from the wall Tobias had shoved him into. He was exhausted from 2 nights of huddling in the cold cell. Propping a pillow behind his head, he stretched out. Vaguely, he thought about looking at a map, planning out his next route. If he was leaving in the morning, there were things that needed to be done. Tobias, who had Luke on his back, spoke up. "You don't have to go, you know." "I almost don't want to." Zeke found a more comfortable position on the sofa. "This place is starting to feel homey. I've been here too long. But you knew from the start I wasn't staying. I just needed a shoe for my horse." Luke slipped off his back when Tobias sat up on his knees, resting on his heels. "I still don't see what's so great about California. I doubt they have anything better than we do." Zeke snorted. "Oceans?" "Ostkaka," Tobias said. "Bless you. No, it's a Swedish dish." Tobias pulled Luke from where he was trying to climb on his back, then gently tossed him to the ground in front and tickled his chest. "That settles it. You can't leave until you've enjoyed Ostkaka." Zeke smiled and added that to the list of things he needed to do before he left. He wondered if it was something he could order for breakfast from the bakery in the morning with his tea ring. Spending all of Simon's $5 in town would be more fun than giving it back. "Elle likes you, you know," Tobias said. Zeke rubbed his face and rested his eyes. His eyelids were too heavy. He spoke the truth in his answer. "I like her, too, but I'm not staying." He yawned. "She doesn't need someone like me." "Best you leave soon, then," Tobias said. "But there's no reason you should stay at the hotel. We have space for you, at least for tonight. The sofa is all yours. It's nothing fancy, but it's better than a cot. And warmer." Tobias stood. Luke dangled from one arm. "Zeke?" Zeke grunted. The weight of his eyelids proved too heavy to pry open any longer. He closed them for a minute. The tension in his face released a fraction with each breath he exhaled. His frame slumped into the corner of the sofa, with a pillow tucked beneath his head. Luke's giggles faded from Zeke's consciousness as sleep overtook him.